Welcome to Cake on Tuesday, where we spotlight the rule breakers, the underdogs who refuse to listen when everyone said it won't work. I'm Elizabeth Bieniek, and for the next 20 minutes, we're diving into another disruptive innovation story that proves sometimes the craziest ideas change everything. Today's guest is Erin Pelicano Cauble. Erin's life has not been free of pivots. With a background in civil engineering and industrial manufacturing, her career took a different trajectory when her American-made jewelry brand became nationally recognized, resulting in her husband resigning from his job to join her in running the jewelry business for over a decade. But life isn't always predictable, and Erin found herself battling for her life against stage 4 colon cancer. While she is a survivor, now cancer-free, that experience made her rethink how resilience plays such a critical role in leadership. She created the Venture Project to help business owners build companies designed to adapt and endure, because resilient leadership changes everything. Erin, welcome to the show. I'm excited to go a lot of different directions with this. Can you please start off and tell us?
Much, Elizabeth, for having me.
So glad to have you. Please start off and tell us a little bit about what sets your soul on fire about what you're doing right now.
Well, I love being able to share the really difficult things that I've been through in a way that's going to help people moving forward. And I've always been passionate about small business ownership and small business owners themselves. I've been down to Capitol Hill meeting with lawmakers before on small business topics. And if you don't have the experience in entrepreneurship or small business ownership, it's really hard to understand how complex it really can be and the nuance. And I've just really found the experiences of the past 10, 15 years for myself, both good and bad. There's just so much to learn from. And I love offering that guidance to other owners and having them have their aha moments of ways they can move forward and just find success in a way that maybe they couldn't imagine before.
Yeah. Okay, let's start at the beginning a little bit here. I like the fact that your life took a pivot. I think a lot of times we go to school for something, we start a career in something, we can't even find success in that, but then something else comes together.
Right.
And so I love this fact that you were doing well in engineering. That's what your background was in. You were working in industrial manufacturing. But then this came about that you had a jewelry business that really took off. And I imagine that was not a pivot you were planning early on.
That's very true. It's very true. So I've always had a creative side and I love numbers, and I'm still a numbers girl to this day. So I had a natural inclination towards anything that resulted in having to use numbers. And I
Okay.
loved the concept of design when I was a little kid as well. So I did think about becoming an architect at one point, but I pursued engineering and I really loved it. I went to the University of Maryland. I have 2 kids there now, and I loved the program. But I did have a little bit of a restless spirit, I would say, about what I was really doing because of the creative side of me. Down to the fact when I was a little girl, I wasn't planning on sharing this. When I was a little girl, I used to design clothes. I used trash bags to make clothes. Yep. I always had this conflicted vision of what my future might look like. But I loved my early career in engineering. But the things in life happen. The economy changed in the construction industry where I am in the DC area. At the time, I was working for a structural steel fabricator. I loved the people I worked with. And, I had 3 little kids, life circumstances. I think a lot of women can relate to that. I had 3 very, very young kids at the time. And a lot of things changed in the industry suddenly. And I also had this passion. I'd started taking these classes and making jewelry as just an outside hobby. And I thought I'd launch an Etsy shop. This was back when Etsy was very different, back in I guess it was 2011 when my initial shop opened. And I thought, I'll just do this for fun on the side. And I had, over the course of about 18 months, some very rapid, unexpected successes that to continue to see where I could take it. And just one of those things in life. I never imagined I would be a jewelry designer. I had taken some classes, like I said, some silversmithing classes, but I loved it. And I loved reaching, people. My designs in particular were around connection and motherhood and a lot of things that were very relevant in my life at that. And yeah, I decided I was going to be pursuing entrepreneurship and the pivot that I had not planned.
I love that. So I talk a lot with founders about when to pivot when an idea is not working.
Mhm.
You were almost facing the other thing of when an idea is working and when does something go from a side hustle to this is a full-time business to the point not just you, but your husband was joining you as well.
Right, right.
What did that look like and how did you make that decision of, all right, we're going to do this?
It's a risky decision, and with entrepreneurship, um, comes risk, and it depends on your risk tolerance, but I am someone that really wanted to be informed, so we had a lot of meetings with accountants, financial advisors, and to make the decisions,
Back to
especially
the
when my
numbers thing, huh?
yeah, exactly, especially when my husband, when I grew to the point where I could not do this alone,
Mm,
short of, I had other people coming in and running the business during our seasonal, really busy times, as contractors, but bringing him on full time, it's good to sometimes you have to decide your own risk tolerance, but
yeah.
it's be informed. And so we
Yeah.
wanted to know the pros and cons. What were our options if it didn't work? Like leaving his job on good terms. It
Hmm.
didn't work out. I think that for entrepreneurs, even if you're just thinking of leaving your own job, let alone, making this a family endeavor, making sure that you're really smart about looking at the numbers, what you need to survive, whatever everyone's household looks different,
Right.
your expenses, but what risk tolerance do you have? But making sure that you're informed and you don't get yourself in a position that you a lot of the work I do with founders now is about evaluating risk. And even
Yeah.
despite the fact that um, I think this way, I think in numbers, I was ill prepared for becoming sick with stage 4 cancer in my 40s because so I can say that we were prepared for a lot
Hmm.
of things, but that was not something that I could have ever imagined happening. And
Yeah.
that is definitely a situation that I think a lot of small business owners and founders can find themselves in if you can't fully prepare for something like that. But there are
Right.
things you can put in place to protect yourself more. And that is a lot of the work I do with people, both in their leadership role, having that resilience, but also just in foundationally in your business, making sure
Hmm.
you have better preparation for the unexpected.
So knowing that you were very thoughtful in originally launching your jewelry business and scaling that, was this an inkling in your mind of, hey, maybe I want to help other people do this, to really think through the numbers, make it a thoughtful decision before your life got disrupted and this became more top of mind?
Yes, absolutely. I began working with other founders probably about 7, 8 years ago. And that was mostly based on people coming to me because of the success I had found, people within my network
Mm,
and had an interest in starting a business typically.
okay.
I think for most entrepreneurs, and I'm sure you experience this in the people that you speak with, they have a call. There's a tug, like there's a little bit of a tug, and maybe you feel like
Right.
you're unable to based on, or sometimes you don't even have a solid idea, but you want to try something. So I had people in different industries and different arenas come into my life and want to talk through ideas and sometimes ways to improve their business. So it was something I had already started to do. And I began advocating through a leaders network that I'm a part of down because I'm about an hour outside of the District of Columbia, advocating for small business owners. And so I started working more and more with business owners. And I knew this was the direction that I wanted to move in my career because I felt
Okay.
very called based on, I think, a lot of my experience, both successes and hardships, even before I was sick. It's difficult running a business. There were great times, there were challenges that we had within the jewelry brand. And I knew that I felt called to do so, but life went on pause when I got sick. I mean, that it
Yeah.
really, like everything was on pause.
Yeah.
And then going through those really, really difficult several years, I knew if I was going to survive, that this was the direction that I was being pulled. And I did have a lot of peace around that and
Hmm.
wasn't exactly sure how it would look. And that's part of entrepreneurship. It's seeing what people need and uh, figuring out where your passions and your talents overlap with what people need and how you can help them and what they're willing to invest in. So,
Yeah. Okay. I want to dig a little bit into this topic of resilience and maybe from the frame of false security. I was talking to an entrepreneur recently who had done some entrepreneurial coaching. He had a business, was very successful, was doing entrepreneurial coaching, helping other people. And then the economy changed and he realized his business was not as resilient as he thought it was. And he ended up going through a whole new process, rebuilding, and now has a much more well-rounded, resilient practice. So I
Yes.
want to talk about it from that perspective when, you mentioned you put the thoughtful planning in initially, you ran the numbers, you knew what it was going to look like, but
Right.
we're not always prepared for the completely unexpected. So when you say focus on resilience, what does that mean to you now?
So resilience to me is multifaceted. And when we're talking about resilience in business, it's starting, I mean, and in life, in other parts of your life as well, but business specifically, having a foundation of being prepared. Like there are
Mm,
so many things in life that we can prepare for that we don't prepare for because it feels boring or we don't want to think about it. Thinking about people, when you become a parent, people say you should have a will, for example. A lot of people don't do that because they don't want to think about it or they get busy and they think about it later. And then it's like same goes for business.
right.
You have plans in place. And I'm not that everyone's going to have a like life altering medical crisis like I had, but maybe you're going to be hacked. Maybe your website is going to be taken
Right.
down. Maybe you're going to have some sort of giant, financial fraud happen. There's just so many things. Maybe you have a weather event that it decimates your location. There are just a lot of risks involved that we often aren't prepared for. And maybe we have some, for example, this is just one example, basic business insurance. But do you really understand what that covers? Are you
Yeah.
training your staff, if you have staff, are you really training them on how to handle customer situations? Do they know the processes? Are you communicating with your clients and your customers when things do happen? Because that's how you can quickly, trust gets eroded, for example, when things
Very
happen
quickly.
and say you have delays. There's just
Hmm.
so many things. So really going in and looking at your, like doing a risk assessment and making sure that you have covered all of your bases that you're able to prepare for. Like I said, we're not
Hmm.
always able to prepare for everything. Do you have disability insurance as an owner? Do you have that financial resilience if something happens? So I always think of resilience as starting with being prepared. And then the second
Mm.
part is learning to be adaptable in business. And probably like you were speaking of an entrepreneur you spoke with recently, sometimes it's really difficult because as an entrepreneur, we feel very emotionally connected to our business. It's our
It's our
baby.
baby.
And
Yeah.
yeah. And whether it's a product or a service, the brand, everything that you've developed, even though it, sometimes people have shiny object syndrome where you're constantly wanting
Hmm.
to do something different and has its own issues involved. But sometimes we're just so connected that even though the market's changing or customer needs are changing, um, or you really developed something that people weren't as enthusiastic about as you had hoped, being able to adapt is critical to resilience, in my opinion. So that's part two. Um, so being prepared, learning to be adaptable, and part of being adaptable is being open to feedback, and that's
Mm.
both from your customers and your employees. I've had some interesting conversations with business owners and with employees of these small business owners that feel like they have some really great suggestions or concerns, but they won't even be entertained. And so being
Mm.
open as a business owner to feedback from everyone that you're involved, that there's obviously always going to be one-offs and there's going to be people that complain about things that you have to learn to let those go. But really being open to being adaptable and not feeling so emotionally tied to something that you love it into its early demise, it really doesn't that doesn't serve you as a small business owner. And then lastly, in context of business, is focusing on what's actually profitable because
Mm.
that is for me, those are the three parts of being resilient: being prepared, being adaptable, and making sure you're focusing on what's profitable. Because in the end, your business is not going to be sustainable if you're not looking at those numbers and making sure your time and energy are focused on what's profitable for your business. if you want to have a hobby, you can have a hobby.
Yeah. That's a very important distinction between a
Yes.
hobby and a business.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, I want to ask a question about the preparation and how do you balance being prepared and doing the due diligence to know that you're being thoughtful and future looking in that with the need to move quickly and not get caught up in
Right.
analysis paralysis?
Yes.
How do you balance those two?
Well, I think sometimes that is where you need a third party to come in and even help you evaluate some of those things. And whether it is
Mm,
someone like myself that comes in and looks at that, or you talk with hopefully you have a trusted group of professionals in, finance, maybe an attorney, maybe it's your insurance
hmm.
agent, um, and do an overall assessment and make sure that even if you're starting with working on one thing a month, you can't dedicate the amount of time it would take sometimes to completely overhaul, but starting with one thing at a time and still being able to run your business and just know that it's constantly evolving. That's part of the resilience, but also having procedures in place. For example, I used the hacking and I used that example, but say you have employees that have access. Do you have a procedure in place if an employee leaves that you
Hmm.
ensure that they are removed access from all of your social media accounts or any other platforms that they had
Right.
access to? And it does not mean that employee is going to go and do something nefarious, but what it means is if their accounts are ever compromised,
Right.
your accounts are vulnerable. So sometimes people are like, oh, why trust him? I don't need to worry about that. But that's not the point. So
Right.
really just going through section by section of your business and making sure you're protected. And if it's once a month, you dedicate a couple hours the first of the month and make sure you're tackling one of these items.
Yeah. Okay. So you were looking at business resilience before you got sick, and I'm sure that magnified a million fold afterward.
Yeah.
I'm curious now as you're approaching your current organization and business looking forward, how do you define success for yourself and your company now, and how is that different from when you first started out?
From when I first started this working with business owners, I was just doing it out of a love for business owners. It really was. It didn't start as necessarily a platform. It just it was a passion that I had for helping business owners. But I had a really interesting growth pattern on my jewelry brand, and it was a time when Etsy was very different. Like it's something that couldn't be replicated right now.
Hmm.
And I do because that platform has changed so much. So you wouldn't replicate that exactly right now. Anyone that is selling goods on Etsy would understand that, especially if you were doing so 10 years ago. But I also believe that's the point is it's constantly changing and evolving. So to me, success is knowing that at the end of the day, you're pursuing the work that you want, you're able to sleep at night and not have a tremendous you always have worries, but I think as small business owners, if we are not fully prepared and we do not feel we have a strong resilience, there is something that's keeping you up at night, literally, that you're
Yeah.
worrying about. So being able to grow your business and be profitable, but be able to sleep at night at the same time, I would say that is really key to the success that I feel in my life now. Um, After what I've been through, having a sense of peace is part of my vision of success. That as a young person, that never was even on my radar, really. We all
Yeah.
want to have that sense of peace, but as you get older and you go through difficult things, I think the hustle loses its charm and really a desire to have a successful, sustainable, profitable business and you're doing work that you're passionate about, but while having a sense of peace while doing it. I'd say that to
Yes.
me is success.
Well said. So, as you're looking ahead for the venture project, what are you most excited about next? I mean, you're an entrepreneur at heart, so you're always looking at something new. What are
Yeah.
you most excited about?
Yes. I've been working with a few incubator programs, which has been phenomenal. And I'm starting to work with a new incubator program and launching the same concept within my local area. Um,
Okay.
they're business circles and they are in person. If you think of Obviously, large corporations have advisory boards, right? There are other arenas where people who run larger businesses have access to not just guidance, but connection with other business owners. So we are doing business circles where I'm bringing together 10 to 20 owners. We're going to sit down once a month over about 2.5 hours in a confidential environment where we are hashing through business problems. And really, so this is not networking. This is not masterminding. This is sitting down and hashing through our business problems. And I have my first one starting tomorrow. Actually, I'm really excited for it. So it's called the Independent Business Circle. And I'm also going to be launching a digital version. It's very different. I think a lot of people are craving in person right now, in-person connection.
Yeah.
We can do a lot of things virtually, which is an amazing shift in technology. I'd say even since COVID, right? I mean, so much we do virtually, but I think there's a desire to have some in-person connection. And so these independent business circles are definitely, the next step in bringing local people together and hash through these business problems that we often feel like we're handling in isolation. So,
Yeah. So, Erin, if somebody wants to get involved in one of these business circles, or if they just want to follow you and find out more about what you
yes.
do, where can they find you?
So you can find me so the platform is called The Venture Project. The website is theventurepro.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn at Erin Pelicano Cauble and connect with me there. I'm always happy to talk to people via LinkedIn.
Amazing, Erin. Thank you so much for joining us on Cake on Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining another Cake on Tuesday celebration of beautiful disruption. Please share it, review it, and find more innovative stories at podcast.cakeontuesday.com. I'm Elizabeth Bienyik. Be bold, stay curious. Now go have some cake.